Okay. Um, it's my part. Ako po si Jeffrey Bunquin. Ako po ay isang Filipino scientist na kasalukuyan pong naninirahan dito sa Amerika, particularly in Houston, Texas. So I am a full-time scientist at ako po ang founder ng Filipino Science Hub. So ako po yung nagpasimula nito, kasama ko sila JP during the earlier days of the platform. Kung sa mga nauna pong contents, siguro na nakita nyo about FilSciHub, nakita nyo po ako nagle-lecture ako about chemistry. So that was me trying to share, like my understanding of chemistry or as a science in general. But ang akin po talagang bread and butter is research. So I am a full-time scientist in one of the biggest research and technology organization in the world when it comes to oil and gas and petrochemicals technology development. And so what I will be, so my role for today is to not give you a rehash ng mga technical stuff or yung tips that and practices that JP and Marty shared earlier. But I think the value that I can bring is to share with you some research ideas that I was involved in the ideation of during the course of my experience as a researcher, and also give you a much more real perspective of how ideation is really done. So after the high school training and after college experience of doing research, pagdating po ba ng PhD or postgraduate, or if you're doing research and technology development full-time, is it any different? Yung bang mga kagaya ko, napa-perfect na ba namin yan na pagtingin namin sa isang bagay, can we pinpoint, like what the most important question really is? So yun po yung i-share ko sa inyo through my experiences. But before we go there, I would like to give you, quite a bit of an overview of, what to expect out of this talk, and also to introduce myself. So, ito po, ang approach po na gagawin ko dito, hindi talaga sobrang technical itong discussion na gagawin ko. Kasi we have a fairly broad scope of audience. Meron tayong high school students, we have college students, we have teachers at different levels as well. And we saw some of our former professors from UP as well dialing in. But what I would like to do is to share with you some of my experiences to put into perspective, paano mo ba dadalhin sa sunod na level yung mga natutunan mo ng high school, yung mga natutunan mo ng college. Kasi gusto ko rin pumanggitin, my very first exposure to research was when I was in first year high school. So I participated in as an Intel Science Fair competition. This dates back to about, I think, 1999. So ganun na po ako katanda. But it all started there at the high school level. And then, that experience led to, a couple of other research experiences. And then here I am now, a full-time researcher, a full-time scientist. So, ito po yung gusto kong ipakita sa inyo ngayon na nagbabago ba talaga yan? May pinagkaiba pa ba? Yung prosesong binigay ni Marty at ni JP? Or kaparehas lang din ba siya? Or kami ba yung mga kaparehas namin na tinatawag na experts ay nagkakamali rin ba? Napapasobra pa minsan ang ginagawa namin? O nagkukulang din ba ang aming ginagawa? So, ito yung gusto ko pong sagutin. But before we proceed to some of, the cases that, or some of the situations that I will be sharing with you, I would like to reintroduce myself to those people who might not be aware of me. And, to put into context, bakit ba ako nagsasalita tungkol dito? Do I have enough, or do I have sufficient experience to speak at this level? So, yun po, kung mapapansin nyo, magkakaparehas kami ng slides nila JP kasi kinopya ko po ang slides nila with their permission. So ako po si Jeffrey Bunquin. Ako po ay tubong Batangas. Ako po ay nagtapos ng Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from UP Los Baños. So this was back in 2006. That's when I graduated. After that po, in 2009, for over 4 years, I took up, I was admitted to the PhD in chemistry program of the University of Alberta in Canada. So, those 4 years of education in Canada, I believe were my formative years really as a scientist. And since 2006 po, or 2005 to 2006, so I have been working on research programs on a bunch of different areas. So, with a few gaps, somewhere in between. But, to summarize, like my scope of a research, so I have actually participated in research programs over the academia, government, and industry trisector. Trisector. So I will be giving you quite a bit of an idea of the granularity of that scope. Over the past 15 years, I have I have published about like 15 international peer-reviewed publications, most of which are in high-impact journals. And then since I am a research scientist, like mostly working in the government and industry sector, most of the research that I'm doing are actually top secret. So they're highly classified. So makikita nyo lang po yung hints nung ginagawa ko talaga over the past 7 years, I would say, through inventions and patents. So at the moment po, what happened? Okay, so at the moment, I have about like 25 inventions already covered by granted patents and pending submissions, and there's we're hoping to be able to continue our contribution to the field through the activities that I'm engaged in at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, the image was missing. Let me just could you please perhaps like refresh it? It's not working, JP. Okay, so just to give you an idea po of my experience po over the years. So, as I said, I started my career or my very first research experience was in UP Los Baños. So in 2006, I performed a research po there under the supervision of my PhD advisor, Professor Evelyn Rodriguez, working on phytochemical research. I was essentially investigating the effect of plant sterols when it comes to lowering the cholesterol levels of humans. I think like it refreshed already. So kindly present it. Okay, so then po ako nag-start. But then after that, after I graduated, I went on and taught in UP as an instructor for a year. And then after that, I was planning on pursuing a PhD research abroad. But then I also wanted to be able to experience, what it is, what life or what a career is like outside of the academia. So I went on and joined Shell Philippines po. So I went and worked for their refinery in Batangas City, which is actually 10 minutes away from our house. So it was a very great experience. I had so it was in Shell that I had my first exposure to refining. So kung paano ba yung crudo na para siyang tubig sa imbornal, paano ba siya nalilinis through the refineries or through the chemical plants in such a way na pagdating nun sa sasakyan ninyo, parang siyang clear liquid. So that was the thing that triggered my interest in the area of petrochemical research. And so like after that, when I left Shell after a year of working there, I went on to my PhD university where I pursued organometallic chemistry and in particular homogeneous catalysis. So I will be sharing a situation or a project or an idea that I pursued in grad school, and how that could be used as an example of a fairly or a pseudo-linear ideation process where we formed an idea, and then after execution, we were able to push that to fruition. So natupad kung ano man yung binalak namin noong una. And then after that, 2013 to 2017, I actually moved to the US. I was hired in as a researcher at Argonne National Laboratory. So it is a research laboratory of the US government. So dito we were doing some classified research for the US Department of Energy in particular. So dito mas seryoso na kasi may pressure kasi I'm working independently as a researcher, starting as a postdoctoral fellow. So para siyang sa medical doctor, para siyang yung residency. So nagustuhan naman nila ako doon, and they promoted me into a principal investigator position. So essentially I was one of the leaders of the group. So I was leading a research being done by other postdocs, so people of the same age as I was during that time. So dito na, nung mas seryoso na yung scope, dito ko naranasan yung I would ideate or I would form ideas, but then pagdating sa execution, mali pala yung interpretation or parang kailangan namin i-fine-tune. There has to be, we had to do several rounds of iterations of the ideas or of a proposed solution for us to get to the impact or the result that we wanted. So dito ko na nakita yung totoong heartbreak of doing research or even of formulating idea. So i-share ko rin po ito. And then after in 2017, I was invited to join the Research and Technology Development Organization of ExxonMobil, which is still by far like the biggest integrated oil and gas and petrochemical company in North America. And nandun po kami sa core research headquarter nito. So I would also like to say na this is a shout out to our professors back in UPLB. So far po in the history of that research and technology organization of Exxon, there has only been so far two Filipino scientists na nakapasok doon. Nauna po is yung first summa cum laude ng chemistry, which is a very good friend of mine, who I look up to the most. And then ako pa lang po yung pangalawa, and both of us came from the Institute of Chemistry, UPLB. So I would also like to say that, yung experience ko sa high school, it led me to where I am right now. And yun po from those experiences now, we are getting represented at the world stage po when it comes to research and technology development. So that's also like one particular motivation that I would like to share with the students and teachers right now po. Kahit nasa high school level pa lang kayo. If you take this seriously, if you really decide to develop yourself in the area of research, you can really go quite far. I would say that my current job in ExxonMobil has always been my dream job, and I was able to achieve it because my interest in research and my skills and my characters were actually honed at the high school and at the college level. To the fullest extent, I could say that. So that the roles of our teachers are really very important in helping our students reach their goals. Okay, so to make this, moving on from this, so I have been to a bunch of different places already, and if you would notice, ang dami pong areas doon na ginawa ko. Merong homogeneous catalysis, heterogeneous catalysis, materials engineering, process chemistry, product development. So what I did was I tried to also like do a mapping of like the keywords that would describe all of the publications and patents that I have published and communicated so far. And marami po siya. But yung size po nitong mga text na to is commensurate with the frequency. So kahit po ang dami ko nang nagawa, I am still defined by my expertise, which is in catalysis research, which is in chemicals research. Most of my topics are also like in energy research. So doon po nyo makikita na kahit if you go quite far and broad, you're still defined mainly or largely by your expertise. So yun po yung gusto namin ipakita sa inyo. Pero ba't ko ba pinapakita sa inyo ito yung diversity na ito? So pinapakita ko sa inyo diversity nitong mga bagay na nagawa ko dahil po, okay, could you please go back very quickly? Because it is very important for you to be part of a dynamic research community. So when nag-involve po ako sa engineering, na-involve ako sa spectroscopy, na-involve ako sa materials engineering, mainly because I collaborate with people. And this is the reason why earlier on, even at the high school level, we were encouraging the teachers to really engage, with their fellow teachers, and also at the same time, engage with your students. So dapat po bukas ang usapan ninyo. That is part of ideation. So sana po, gusto ko po sanang ibigay sa inyo yung medyo mas progresibong pagtingin sa mga bagay-bagay na pagdating po talaga sa research or sa classroom in general, dapat po tayo mga teachers, bukas po tayo sa tanong at sa mga suggestions ng ating mga estudyante. Kasi hindi lang po dapat sa atin nanggagaling ang mga ideya. Hindi lang po sa atin nanggagaling dapat lahat ang solusyon. Kasi we can also learn from our students. And that is something that, I also learn. I mean, meron pong mga tao who do the work in the lab for me. At the moment, I mostly work on ideation. And then there are people doing the experiments for me based on my design. But, that doesn't mean that just because I am the one coming up with the ideas, laging ako yung tama. Sometimes po, they will provide you with feedback or suggestions that will really help you in improving your research topic. So yun po, be collaborative, be open-minded, and be open to a discourse. Yun po. It is very important in the ideation process. Next slide, please. Bibilisan ko na lang po ito, papasadahan ko na lang para hindi po tayo masyadong magtagal dito. Okay, so ito yung mga sinabi nila JP kanina. And essentially, pagdating po talaga sa hardcore R&D or research and technology development work, it's the exact same workflow of ideation. So essentially what happens is, you are faced with a fairly broad topic or question. And then the intention is for you to be able to come up with research that generates value, that builds a body of knowledge that you can actually offer up to, to relevant communities for them to be able to leverage, the learnings that you come up with. Diba? Gusto po natin may impact, sabi nga ni Marty at ni JP, dapat may importansya siya. Not only because interested ka, but hopefully, ang maganda kasing paraan ng paggawa ng research is may kapupuntahan siya, may application siya. So essentially, yun din pong yung workflow na binanggit ni JP kanina, after the broad topic identification, what you do is, you pick a subtopic or you try to fine-tune it. You have to narrow it down into a scope that you can cover with the resources that you have. So that is very important. So after topic selection, that's when you do your background research po. You start asking, or you start prioritizing first. What are your 5 W's and H questions? So what, where, when, who, how, who, why, and how. So you have to go through all of those questions for you to be able to narrow down. Ano po yung pinaka-importante doon? Kasi when you are coming up with a topic for an idea, hindi po pwedeng i-address yung 6 na yun ng sabay-sabay. Lalo na at the high school level, even at the college level. And I would also say, kahit doon po sa level namin, I'm working for one of the biggest research organizations in the world. Hindi po lahat na resources meron din po kami. Meron po siyang mga questions that we have to actually put to a much lower level at the of prioritization kasi hindi sapat ang iyong resources. Sometimes those questions need to wait for them to get answered. And ang tanong po dito is how do you prioritize which questions are to be addressed first, diba? So that's actually when quality background research needs to be done. So sabi nga ni JP kanina, quality background research will be able to save you time. Not only hours, not only days, it could be years. It can save you from doing an experiment na hindi naman kailangan. So hindi masasayang ang resources ninyo. So ito po, at the high school level, I highly encourage our teachers to first practice and really learn how to do this. In a way na kapag bihasa na po kayo, pag itinuro nyo to sa mga estudyante ninyo, alam mo, magagawa rin nila ito ng maayos. Kumbaga, meron po tayong notion. I don't want to sound negative, upon saying this. Pero mahalaga po talaga na maganda yung, maayos yung kalidad ng pagkakaintindi ng ating mga guro pagdating sa paggawa ng research, pagdating sa science in general. Kasi, ang tinatawag, yung kasabihan po tayo na kung ano po yung ipinasok, more likely, ganun din yung quality ng lalabas. So, garbage in, garbage out. If you actually put in gold, more likely, ganito rin po ang lalabas. So, I highly encourage you po. Marami po tayo mga platforms, not only FilSciHub, that can help you improve, upon, the way you actually do research, your expertise in research, your level of comfort when it comes to research. So, ito po talaga yung gusto namin ipakita sa inyo. Okay, after ninyo na background research, you'll be able to narrow it down. Baka isang tanong lang ang kaya nyong i-address, baka 2 lang. And then after that, you come up with the proposal, a research proposal. So you plan out. How are you gonna tackle this? So so one thing that Marty actually mentioned earlier is that you have to have the end game in mind. So what that means is that, at least in my own opinion, effective researchers are the ones that can come up with an idea, and at the same time, do a thorough enough background research for them to be able to plan out the first 2 sets of experiments. So that's actually how I judge. So, sige po, judgmental ako. So that's typically how I evaluate researchers. The most effective ones are the ones that, if you ask them, what would be the first 2 experiments that you will carry out to prove this point, they will be able to identify those. So that speaks to the level of quality of research. So yun po yung gusto ko parang ipakita sa inyo. And then now the question. So, ito po, meron na naman akong words of wisdom na i-share sa mga teachers. So, siguro po dapat po tanggapin rin po natin itong realidad na ito na ang scientific method po ay hindi po linear path. So, hindi lang po siya yung isang pasada lang, like from start to finish, it's perfection. Hindi po. Ang scientific method po, it should be applied in life. Yung gaya nun, you would, parang tayo, nung bata tayo, nangangarap tayo, gusto natin by this time, natupad ko na itong pangarap na to. And then life happens. So what happens after that is that, you will be faced with setbacks. And then, for you to be able to successfully navigate life, you have to be able to reflect on what caused your setbacks. And go back, reflect on things, do your research, and then be wise about it. Learn from all of them. So, meron pong circularity ang scientific method kasi more often than not, you will not be able to hit the nail on the head on your first attempt. Minsan po, ilang attempts yan. For example, sabi ni Marty kanina, minsan 5 out of 10 out of all your experiments will work. In grad school po, if you're doing research every day for a good 4 years, most of the time, for every 100 experiments that you will run, minsan isa lang yung gagana doon, minsan wala pa. So you have to keep fine-tuning this. You have to learn from every experiment that you do. You have to actually keep revisiting the literature. Did anything of higher quality come up? So yun yung dapat po nating matutunan. So from the point po of the research proposal, you might end up like having to go back to refine your idea. Or even all the way up to the experimentation. Pagdating ng experimentation ninyo, meron ba kayong na-realize, meron ba kayong bagong discovery? Did you come across something that is also equally interesting that might also help offer ideas or solutions to other pressing problems? So, po, ito po, this is an exercise that you have to develop across like over a certain period of time. You won't be able to be an expert at this overnight. And even like working on this for about 15 years now, I couldn't claim myself to be an expert at this. Okay, so what I will be doing po is I will be sharing with you 3 case studies po. So essentially 3 experiences po where I experienced something po na from ideation till the very end. Could you go back? Medyo pseudo-linear siya. So kung ano yung na-idea namin in mind when we came up with the proposal, when we did the experiments, na-achieve namin yung goal. So that's pseudo-linear. And then after that, meron yung circular po. Yung ang dami naming, I would consider setbacks, not necessarily failures. So ito, nagpaikot-ikot kami hanggang sa nakita namin kung ano pa talaga yung kailangan. And then lastly, the case of serendipity. Kasi ito, yung third case po, gusto kong ipakita sa inyo kasi baka ang notion ng mga tao is kailangan sobrang talino mo, kailangan sobrang kang creative for you to come up with a research idea. There are also times that if you just keep yourself, if you're just good at scanning your environment, and if you're keeping an open mind to phenomena happening around you, sometimes lalagpak na lang po yan sa harapan nyo yung research idea na yan. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-narrow down kasi you just have to answer one question. So bibigyan ko po kayo ng examples. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay, so yung case 1 po, sabi ko sa inyo yung medyo pseudo-linear ideation. So yun po, parang kung ano yung pinlano namin ng una, yun yung natupad. So ito pong unang experience na ito na i-share ko was my experience working on my PhD research in Canada. So noon po ako nasa Canada, noong 2009, napaka-uso po nun yung tinatawag nilang Alberta oil sands. So sinabi po nating oil sands, yun po ay mga buhangin or lupa na meron pong kasama na waxy material, so hydrocarbon. So para po siyang crude oil, pero ang diferensya po sa crude oil, kasi yung crude oil po kasi is liquid. Yun pong Alberta oil sands is a solid material. Mainly because yung hydrocarbon components nito ay malalaki. Ang tawag naman sa kanila is archipelago and continental model. So sobrang laki ng molecules, solid sila at room temperature. But then the good thing about this material is that it is an abundant resource. So kung i-upgrade mo siya, through refining, pwede ka makapag-produce ng fuels and ng chemicals out of it. So now, the question that we were faced with is, what can we do? What technology can we develop para ma-upgrade itong locally available and abundant resource? So sabi nga ni Marty, dapat merong community relevancy ang inyong gagawin. So, dito po papasok yung PhD research ko when it comes to hydrotreatment. So, as early as now, hindi ko po ito gagawin technical. Ang akin pong sharing ng experience ay through pictures lang po, kasi gusto ko naiintindihan ako ng mga bata. So, yung tinatawag na hydrotreatment po, that is the process na kung saan, kung meron kayong molecule, kung nakikita nyo dyan, meron mga sulfur at nitrogen atom. So, yung hydrotreatment po, it's a process that you use heat and hydrogen para tanggalin yung sulfur at nitrogen atom. Ang tanong, bakit ba kailangan natin yung tanggalin sa petroleum? Kailangan natin yung tanggalin kasi kapag napunta sa gasolina, ang sulfur at nitrogen at sila ay nasunog doon sa makina, they will form sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides, which are gaseous pollutants. So pag napunta sila sa atmosphere, they can induce acid rain. So ayaw natin yan. So there is a need for us to develop yung mga technologies po para matanggal siya before siya ilagay sa mga sasakyan. Okay, next slide please. So dito, ipapakita ko po sa inyo, paano ba namin ginawa yung ideation dito. No? So, nung pagdating ko po dun sa Canada, ang meron lang kami as a main question was, okay, we have this Alberta oil sand na napakarami niya, na meron siyang commercial potential. Pwede siyang i-refine ng mga petrochemical plants doon to produce fuels and chemicals that the community or that the society can use. And hopefully, magawa ito in a process na economical, yung mura para sa karamihan. Pero, kung titingnan nyo po yun, Alberta Oil Sands, how do you upgrade it? How do you turn it into a product? That is still like a very broad question. Kasi, ang dami mo pwedeng gawin dyan. You can be involved in extraction. Pwede mong i-extract lang yung oil from ihiwalay mo sa lupa. That is one very broad topic. You can also work on refining. So, yung refining po is still a very broad topic. So, what we did was, we did some more background research po. And upon doing some additional background research, we were able to formulate yung more specific questions po. So if you could please switch on to the next slide. Okay. Yung next question po namin was, okay, so since we are chemists and yung extraction is more of like an engineering work, we would stick to our expertise. Dito na po papasok talaga yung role mo sa research or sa technology development ay minsan dapat din nakamatch sa inyong technical skill. So bilang kami po ay chemists, we would work on chemistry-related questions. And one particular sub-area of oil sands upgrading is paano ba natin ito lilinisin? Yung through refining. So yung proseso po ng refining, kung mapapansin po ninyo, yung crude oil po, para siyang burak. It's like mud water. So it's murky, it's black, it smells bad. And then what happens is, pagpunta po niya sa petroleum refinery, for example, sa Pilipinas, we have Petron and we have Shell. We used to have Shell. Pagdaan po niyan doon sa refinery, paglabas niyan doon sa mga pipelines, para na siyang tubig, gano'n na siya ka-clear. So yung pong refining process, siya po yung tumatanggal ng dumi sa petroleum. So refining is composed of two processes. Kung makikita niyo po to, JP, could you please use the cursor to describe what I'm actually going to be saying? So essentially, yung cracking po is you are using heat and hydrogen to break carbon-carbon bonds. So malaki po yung molecules niya, magkakadikit-dikit. So ang gagawin ng refining is puputol-putulin niya yon. So from big continent-type molecules, pag hati mo siya into small fragments, yung solid magiging liquid. Example, that's something that, is chemistry fundamentals in nature. And then secondly, yung second component or second process sa refining is kailangan mong tanggalin yung sulfur, yung nitrogen, at yung metals through hydrotreatment. So dyan na po papasok yung need for further development. But still, kung makikita nyo po, ang dami nating iba't ibang molecules dyan, ang dami nating iba't ibang contaminants, ang daming posibleng chemical reactions na pwede mong i-address. So that is still fairly broad. So sabi namin, hindi to medyo swak sa target namin kasi kailangan medyo focus pa rin. So next, ang sunod po naming tanong naman is, upon doing additional research, could you please move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. Ang kasunod po nun is nag-research pa rin kami. So, ang nakita namin, ang sabi sa literature is, yung mga traditional refining catalyst, hindi siya efficiently nag-work sa oil sands kasi yung properties nung inyong crudo ay iba. Mas mabigat siya. Mas mahirap siyang i-upgrade. So therefore, ang kailangan doon, we have to develop yung mga bagong catalyst. So yung for the benefit of all who may not be familiar with the word catalyst or catalysts in general, so a catalyst is a chemical species that is used to speed up the rate of a reaction. So kung for example po, kung may malaki kayong ganyang molecule, yung catalyst noon, it will play a role para mabilis na mapagputol-putol or ma-chop-chop. Kumbaga para siya pong palakol. It's like an axe. If you have small logs, you only need like a couple of strokes for you to be able to, have firewood. Pero anong nangyari po kasi dito, sa halip na maliit lang yung troso, parang isang pong malaking puno ang kailangan yung i-axe into firewood. So ang nangyari po doon is meron kailangang improvement na gawin. Kailangan may baguhin tayo sa sistema. Pero the question is, alin ba doon? Alin ba ang i-improve natin doon? Kasi we have hydrocracking. So pwede tayo magputol-putol lang ng carbon-carbon bonds. And then meron pa rin hydrotreating. Kailangan natin magtanggal ng sulfur at nitrogen. At since ako lang po ang gagawa ng project na ito, along with a couple of other colleagues of mine back in grad school, so kailangan pa po namin further i-focus yan. So ang next question po na aming sinubukang sagutin ay, Next slide, please. Okay. Ano pa talaga, saan ba talaga mas kailangan yung development? So, nung nag-research po kami, yung carbon-carbon bond breaking, yung mga traditional catalyst ng industry o ng mga kumpanya po na gumagawa nito, gumagana naman siya. Kailangan lang ng konting dagdag po siguro ng energy. So, kailangan mas mainit yung reactor. So, for example, kung 500 ang typical na crudo, baka kailangan 600 or 700 degrees Celsius yung temperature. So, medyo mas madali po siyang ayusin on a process standpoint. Pero, ang area po na mas kailangan ng development was on the removal of the sulfur and nitrogen atoms. And that is because of the nature of the feed. So if you go to the next slide, ito po, meron ako ditong analogy. So kung makikita nyo po yung sulfur at nitrogen components dyan, sila po ay napapaligiran ng iba't ibang molecule. So paano ba nangyayari yung proseso ng catalysis dito? So yun pong ating catalyst is yung nasa kanan. So meron kayo dyang alumina Al2O3. So ang analogy po dyan, para siyang buhangin. So para siyang buhangin, na ang surface ng buhangin na yan, nilagyan nyo ng iba-ibang metal. So cobalt, molybdenum, at meron po siyang sulfide ions. So yung pong catalyst na yun is gumagana siya. So kapag yung sulfur molecules ay dumikit doon sa cobalt at sa molybdenum, na nasa ibabaw ng buhangin, doon po nangyayari yung chemical reaction. Pero ang problema po kasi dito is, ang buhangin, alam po ninyo, solid yan. So, under normal conditions, hindi siya magme-melt. Hindi siya madaling maghahalo with another solid. So, yun po yung problema. Kung baga sa love life na gusto tong topic ng mga estudyante is, paano ba magkakatuluyan sa Romeo and Juliet kung hindi naman naghahalo ang kanilang crowd? So yun, meron pong incompatibility issue. Kasi hindi soluble yung inyong catalyst doon sa inyong hydrocarbon feed. So that incompatibility is specific enough for us to formulate an idea na siguro para mas madaling makuha ng cobalt at molybdenum yung sulfur, kailangan tanggalin natin yung buhangin at palangoyin na lang natin yung cobalt at molybdenum para hanapin yung sulfur at yung nitrogen. And that's how we came up with the idea of my PhD project. Okay, so if you move on to the next slide. So ito po yung proseso na dinaanan namin para from a very broad topic na okay, oil sands, kailangan namin i-improve all the way to a PhD research topic. If you notice po, we only had to repetitively ask like the 3 types of questions. What, how, why, and how. Ano ba yung pangangailangan? Bakit namin kailangan isolve? At paano namin siya isosolve? So, pinaulit-ulit lang po namin yang gawin para po maka-identify kami ng focus research na alam namin pagkatapos namin itong gawin, meron siyang impact. Meron kaming mai-offer na knowledge sa industry. At the same time, meron bagong chemistry knowledge kaming ma-generate, on a personal recorded, on a personal or na career development standpoint. Yun po. So, yun po, kailangan hindi po nyo po kahit po sa PhD level to, hindi namin kailangan sagutin lahat yung what, where, when, who, how, and why. Minsan po, kailangan nyo lang mag-focus. And then after that, ang isa pa pong mahalagang bagay na gusto ko pong ini-emphasize ko kanina was for us to transition from each step, involved in the fine-tuning of the idea, kailangan namin bumalik sa background research. Ano pa talaga yung pangangailangan? Meron na bang nagawa? Kumbaga, dalawa po yung main problem namin, cracking at saka hydrotreatment. Saan ba mas kailangan yung improvement? It turned out na nasa cracking siya. And that's how we came up with a research idea. Could you please move on to the next slide, please? Okay. So ito pong kasunod na slide is, ito po medyo magyayabang na po ako. So I mean, I'm just sharing all these information po to inspire our students rin po. So what do you get out of doing this? If you try to do your best and to develop yourself in research, what do you get out of it? Aside from satisfying the requirements of a degree program. So upon doing this, I was able to develop a bunch of molecular structures po of inorganic or organometallic compounds na never pa siyang na-discover or never pa siyang nagawa na kahit sino pa man. So kami po yung una nakapag-discover ng mga molecules na to na yung nickel pala kaya mo gumawa ng cluster na para siyang square, pero ang nickel, dalawa lang yung bonds. So yun. Pero paano man namin nagagawa to? Kasi we had the expertise. So, alam niyo bang ang structures na ito ay nabuo base lang sa pag-probe ng movement ng electrons around in a compound. So, yun po. Yun yung level of technical development that you get out of this. So, aside from answering a very, some very important industry problems, you also get to develop yourself as a scientist. So ang dami ko pong natutunan na skills out of doing this. And true enough, yung pong mga materials na discover ko or na-invento po namin during our grad school, they delivered the objective. So yung sulfur at oxygen component and nitrogen component nito pong mga model compounds at the middle equations, natatanggal po namin sila. Ito po yung mga pinakamahirap tanggalan ng sulfur at nitrogen. But we were able to achieve the goal of the objectives of research. And on a personal standpoint, what did I get out of it? So, in my third year as a graduate student, I was 26 years old back then. I already had 8 international patents, so like world filed patents. I had like a peer-reviewed publication in one of the top chemistry journals like in the world po. And then after that, I had university, regional and provincial and national distinctions as a grad student. And when all these were happening, I was the only Asian chemistry graduate student during my time who was representing, our ethnicity and on an international stage. So yun po, ito po, these are bonuses. I mean, hindi ko po nakita itong mga gagawin, itong mga mapapalakong ito. But I'm just sharing all these po, hindi po para magyabang, pero para po ipakita po sa inyo na you can really go far when it like just by being passionate about research. Marami po kayong mapapala while you are doing this po. Okay, next. So ito po yung parang ideal. Ito yung ideal case. Ito na po yung pangalawa ng mga sitwasyon, yung medyo nakikita ko na talaga yung problema. Ano ba yung mga challenges when it comes to ideation? So ito po yung storya naman ng butadiene. So ang gusto ko pong ibigay sa inyong example dito is kung nakikita niyo po yung mga gulong ng inyong kotse, the tires of yung pong tires ng inyong kotse, those are made of synthetic rubber that is, typically made using a combination of 1,3-butadiene as shown here with styrene. Styrene is the blue structure. So it's a polymer. It's a repeating unit of this. So napaka-importante po ng 1,3-butadiene. And yung production niya, pwede mo siyang makuha from N-butane. So ito yung ginagamit kong example kasi ito is relatable to the students. So if you remove 2 molecules of hydrogen from N-butane, you will get 1,3-butadiene, and that you can use to produce rubber. And at the moment, yun pong butane is an abundant resource in the US. So bakit ko tinitingnan yung butane? Kasi I did this when I moved to the US, when I was working for the National Laboratory. And then, upon looking at this area, what we also recognized was that yung energy required for you to produce 1,3-butadiene is very high. And kailangan po niyong isipin, kapag nag-iinit kayo ng kahit na ano pa mang bagay, meron kayong sinusunog na fuel. May panggatong po kayo. At yung pagsunog ng panggatong nyo na yun, that generates greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. So typically po, ang gusto po natin mangyari is magawa natin yung mga proseso natin sa pang-araw-araw na buhay na medyo mas konti lang po yung input natin ng energy po. So para mas makonti ang CO2 input. So definitely kailangan tong ayusin. Kailangan mas milder yung condition para ma-produce mo ang butadiene. And then lastly, hindi ko po alam kung aware kayo sa presyo ng platinum. So platinum po yung metal na ginagamit as catalyst for this. To give you a perspective po, ang presyo po ng platinum ay mas mahal kaysa sa ginto. So kung ganito po ang ating gagamitin, kung hindi po natin maaayos itong sistemang ito, yung cost ng pag-produce ng butadiene ay tataas. Pagtaas ng presyo ng pag-produce niya, mahal din ang mga produkto na makukuha mo galing dyan. So ito po yung nakita kong problema as a young independent scientist back then. Okay, could you move on to the next slide, please? And then okay, nandito naman tayo sa ideation process. So ang finormulate ko doon na big question back then was, kaya ko ba mag-produce ang butadiene from N-butane? Kasi mahalaga siya sa Amerika, kasi nagtatrabaho ko sa Amerika back then. But yung question na yun is still like very broad. Napakalawak pa niya. And hindi ko alam ko pa kung ano gagawin ko. And then after that, we did some more background research to get to the second question. Next slide, please. Okay, so upon doing background research po, it turned out na meron palang dalawang magkakaibang reaction. Yung isa is, pwede kang gumamit ng oxygen to convert N-butane to 1,3-butadiene, and that's called oxidative dehydrogenation. Yung isa naman, hindi mo kailangan ng oxygen. And it turned out, nung ginagawa namin yung research na to, extremely challenging. Mahirap po yung paggamit ng oxygen kasi marami siyang mga safety issues, mahirap i-control yung chemistry, kumbaga malikot siya. So mahirap siyang aralin. So therefore, ang ginawa po namin is kailangan naming i-prioritize yung aming goals. Kailangan naming makapag-generate ng bagong materials, So therefore, we pick the technically feasible route. Kasi hindi kaya ng capabilities namin i-address yung mas mahirap na route during that time. So again, part of the prioritization is your research topic should be compatible to a certain extent, with the resources that you have available, that you have the resources that you have at your disposal. Okay, so after that, we narrowed it down. Yung isang route ang pipiliin namin. Next. Okay, yung next po na question namin dito was, ano ba ang typical na problema? So as we said earlier, mataas yung energy input. Kailangan nating i-minimize yung CO2 removal, and then yung mataas yung catalyst cost. And yung cost is because of the platinum. Kailangan nating palitan yung platinum ng ibang mga bagay. So therefore dito, we had to do some further research. Ano ba yung mga alternative? Ano ba yung pwede namin ipamalit sa platinum? And then after that, after running another round of background research, next slide please. We therefore framed an idea na pwede po siguro gumawa tayo ng mga bagong catalyst na tatanggalin natin yung platinum, papalitan natin siya ng mga metals na cheap and available, and if possible, hindi kasing toxic ng platinum. Baka makita yung chromium dyan. That is just like one of the proof of concept idea. So ito po yung ideation na ginawa na naman namin. So it's iterative. It's still the same set of questions. What, why, and how. And then, you just try to keep coming back. And so ngayon, meron na kaming idea na po, papalitan namin yung buong sistema. Papalitan namin yung platinum ng mas mura at less toxic na metals. Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? So yung una namin pong sinubukang sistema to prove this, okay, I apologize for the lag of our presentation. Ang una po namin sinubukan is ito po, molecular, these are organic polymers. So meron kang carbon and hydrocarbon backbone, meron kang isolated metal. So chromium yung example na ginamit namin dito, but we tested a bunch of other metals. So ano bang sinusubukan namin i-prove dito? Doon kasi sa platinum, catalyst na ginagamit industrially, meron po silang clusters ng platinum ang meron doon. So meron ka mga more than 10 hanggang 100 platinum atoms na ginagamit. Pero doon sa 100 na yun, yung nasa surface lang yung gumagana. So therefore, parang siyang group project, no? So 10 yung naka-assign sa project, pero 2 lang talaga yung gumagana doon. So nasasayang yung numero na inilalagay mo doon kasi hindi naman nagagamit. So therefore, ang question namin is, pwede ba namin gawin yung trabaho ng 100 using just one metal? So i-isolate namin. Isang metal lang, kaya ba niyang gumana? It turned out po, hindi. Kasi yung backbone nito is an organic polymer. Kumbaga yung analogy, para kang gumamit ng asukal. Para inilagay mo yung metal sa asukal. So kapag ininit mo to, yung asukal nito is nagkakaramelize, nadidecompose siya. Yun yung difference nung support noong platinum kasi para siyang buhangin. Yung buhangin kasi kahit initin nyo at the same temperature as at which magkakaramelize yung sugar, hindi siya nangyayari. So ang ginawa po namin doon, okay, hindi gagana yung backbone. So therefore, palitan natin. Next slide please. So dito na po papasok yung sinasabi kong setback. Kasi ang nangyari sa amin dito, ang ginawa ko is I was over-idealistic. Akala ko, pag pinalitan ko lahat ng components ng sistema, I will come up with the next best thing. Mababago ko ang landscape. I will be able to introduce an entirely new system. So it turned out, hindi gagana yung aking initial approach. So I had to do another round of research. Can I improve the stability of this? Pwede ko ba itong initin in such a way na hindi siya madidecompose? Ang next best thing po na pwede namin gawin, ginamit ko lang is common sense. So kung ano man yung support ng platinum, yun din yung gagamitin kong support. So kung buhangin ang support ng platinum, buhangin din ang gagamitin ko pong support for zinc. So, yun po. O, di ba, parang akala ko ang tali-talino ko na. Parang, o, di ba, common sense lang. Pero it turned out, hindi pa rin sapat po yun. Kasi yung reactivity nito, hindi ganun kataas. Hindi niya kayang lampasan ang performance ng platinum. So, therefore, palyado pa rin po ito. So, we had to go back to the drawing board. Research uli. We had to come up with an idea. Could you go to the next slide? And then after nito, 10 ba kami napadpad? So, so it turned out, the best answer is to find a way to keep platinum isolated. Kumbaga sa halip na magkukumpul-kumpul sila in the form of a cluster, kailangan paghiwa-hiwalayin sila. So it turned out, hindi naman po nasayang yung aking second idea kasi kapag po pala dun sa zinc, na nasa buhangin, kapag inilagay mo dun yung platinum, nagdidikit sila ng mahigpit. At therefore, nagdikit na sila, hindi na nagkukumpul-kumpulan yung mga platinum atom. So therefore, ang nangyari po kasi dito, yung kayang gawin ng 100 platinum atoms, kaya ko nang gawin using 1 or 2 platinum atoms. So that is still atom economy. Kasi, kumbaga, 80 to 90% less platinum for the same performance. So ito po yung ipinapakita ko sa inyo na minsan, sobrang idealistic din natin. Minsan we over-ideate. Napapasobra po ang ating ideation to the point na yun po, masyado ka nang naging bias towards a certain idea na akala mo, this is the next best thing, so therefore, I have to do this. Sometimes, like as I said earlier, kailangan nyo lang uling bumalik sa literature, mag-research uli kayo, baka naman walang sense. Baka naman, baka naman yung idea in your mind doesn't have sense. So, what happened here is, we ran into a number of setbacks. But let me assure you, hindi na naman po nasayang yung setbacks na yun. Kasi those are the basis for my next example. So the next example is, could you go to the next slide? Okay. So I will skip through this. Kasi okay, what did I get out of it? I got 14 publications out of it. 10 publications out of this work and then 4 patents. So not bad. Going next po. Okay. This is a topic of serendipity, yung sinasabi ko po kanina na just because feeling nyo nag-fail, ano na yun, sayang yun. Technically, hindi po. Kasi ano ba nangyari? Noon pong ginagawa ko itong mga isolated metals on an organic polymer, there was a time that I had to do control experiments. Napaka-importante po nun. You always have to have your positive and negative controls. And so since I was doing the concept that the reaction of dehydrogenation, it also made sense for me to check yung backward process. Ano ba ang ginagawa ng mga catalyst na to sa hydrogen in the presence of an alkene? Yun po. So nung ginawa ko to, na-discover ko na yung aluminum version nitong material na ito, it hydrogenates. So yung carbon-carbon double bond, it adds a hydrogen molecule around it, which is an industrially useful reaction. And at the same time, it has never been demonstrated for aluminum ever. So ito po yung sinasabi natin na, na-observe ko itong scientific phenomenon na to, itong chemical reaction na to, na hindi ko masyadong pinag-isipan. Hindi siya yung parang inisip ko, parang nagising na lang ako one day na gusto kong gawing catalytic ang aluminum. No, it never happened. This is serendipitous in nature. Kumbaga, nasamahan ka lang din ng swerte. Nangyari na nandun ka sa tamang panahon, sa tamang pagkakataon, para makita mo yung phenomenon na ito. And then what did I do? So, next slide please. After that, we went straight to the ideation session. It was a fairly focused research idea. The question was mainly, why is it working? Yun na lang po yung kailangan namin sagutin. And then after that, it was like fairly easy because when we were evaluating this, what happened was that there's not a lot of literature, which to me was a good thing kasi ibig sabihin wala pang nakakadiscover nito, and that's what I did. And we were able to elucidate, na figure out namin ano ba yung structure ng aluminum for it to behave as a hydrogenation catalyst. And that comprised and this work has been highlighted by a bunch of experts in the area to be one of those very new discoveries in catalysis that should be taken note of. So yun po, observation lang to, nagkataon lang na nakita mo, hindi mo nga talaga to masyadong pinag-isipan. So ito po, pinapakita ko lang po sa inyo na ang research, hindi siya dapat yung parang de novo, from the ground up, i-build mo yung isang building of idea. Minsan nangyayari lang, swerte ka, na tsempohan mo, nakita mo yung observation, and all you have to do is to keep an open mind, to keep scanning your environment. Ang dami po nangyayari dyan that can actually, that can lead to a very important scientific discovery or contribution. Okay, so ito na po yung tatlong cases na sinasabi ko, and we're speeding this up. So we're on to my last couple of slides. So okay, as a research professional po, what I would like to share with you to students and all the teachers at all levels is that ito po yung mga best practices po that based on my personal experiences would really help you ideate research topics for research. So first and foremost is the idea does not have to be perfect. Yun po. So kailangan po yung notion na yun ng perfection, tanggalin nyo na po yan kasi wala naman po nakakagawa ng perfect niyan. Kahit po 10, 20, 15 years na po ang inyong experience sa research. Minsan po, sobra ang inyong effort. Minsan kukulangan ng inyong effort. But, your success at initiating research topics will heavily rely on your attitude. When is it time to give up? When is it time to keep pushing? Yun lang po yun. And that wisdom comes with practice. You just have to keep doing it. Pero ang problema po kasi nito, if we are doing research, kapag kailangan lang natin satisfy ng isang requirement for work or for school, wala pong sustainability, kumbaga yung build up of your expertise and of your intuition. So mahalaga po itong mga bagay na ito. Hindi po kailangang sagutin nyo lahat ng tanong sa ideation stage. Ideation stage. Minsan po isang tanong, one very good question, one high quality question is enough for you to start a functional and a relevant research. Next po, there is no such thing as a stupid question or idea. Ito po, siguro i-address ko dito, minsan po, ang main barrier for this is that takot tayo na i-communicate, halimbawa sa teachers natin, sa advisors natin, or sa bosses natin yung isang idea kasi takot tayo na ma-labelan tayo na, oh, medyo tanga, o medyo hindi maganda yung iniisip mo, or ano, kumbaga walang sense yung sinasabi mo. I would communicate this to the superiors and also their subordinates. We have to stop fostering this type of thinking po. There is no such thing as a stupid idea. Every idea or every question could just be the stepping stone for something that is really great, something that is disruptive and impactful. So yun po, kailangan, we have to engage in the ideation process. We have to entertain all sorts of questions. Kasi wala pong stupid na idea if you have sound answers. Yun lang po yung gusto ko din sabihin sa inyo. And again, background research, high quality background research is very important. Number 3, I will echo the same idea that Marty and JP communicated earlier. Visualize the end game and a path toward the goal. So yun po yung sabi ko, if you come to a point that you have already learned how to carry out quality background research, whether that be to come up with a compelling case for your research topic, or whether it be to browse the literature for state-of-the-art approaches or experiments for you to be able to prove your science, for you to be able to answer your questions, you will reach a point where, once, ideation will become your second nature, and, just like in an instant, you'll be able to prescribe like the first 2 set of experiments to help, prove your point or to prove your concept. So yun po, again, it comes with practice, and you have to keep reading. You have to learn from the works of others. So sabi nga po nila, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. So kami po, kung ano man yung natutunan, yun po ay nakuha namin yun sa mga mentors namin ng high school, mentors namin sa college, sa mga magulang natin, yun po. So kaya po parang this way po, parang we have to acknowledge that we're at this, ganito kaganda yung buhay natin ngayon kasi ang daming natutunan ng mga nauna sa atin. So might as well gamitin yung wisdom nila. So minsan you don't have to recreate the wheel. Sometimes you just have to improve upon what our ancestors have actually done, what the people who predated us had actually discovered. Yun po. And then the fourth one is, the solution should be designed based on the nature of the problem. Okay, ito po, siguro ito mas maglilitanya po ako dito. Kasi I would like to adjust the yun pong commodification na research. Kasi halimbawa, for example, nauso yung research sa nanoparticle. So lahat na lang gagawa ng nanoparticle kahit wala naman talaga silang specific problem na gustong i-address. Anong nangyari lang, gagawa sila ng research na nanoparticle kasi yun yung nabibigyan ng pondo, yun yung madaling mag-publish. But the question is it really making an impact? I would say that this happens a lot even at the college level. So ang gusto ko pong kulturang ipakita din po sa ating mga estudyante at sa ating mga teachers is, again, stick to the scientific method. You're always aiming to come up with a solution to a problem. So kung ito yung problema at andito ka, dapat yung path mo to the problem should actually be, it shouldn't be only leveraging your expertise. Dapat po, the solution that you're coming up with is really a good fit for the problem. Kasi kung anong nangyayari lang dyan, kung ikaw ay karpentero at hindi bukas ang isip mo sa iba't ibang mga skills, lahat na lang ng problema will look like a pako or a nail. And ang solution is yung skill mo, which is yung martilyo po ninyo. So, hindi po siya maganda. So, that's why you have to build your community. Yun po yung mahalaga doon. Kasi the solution to a problem is not necessarily always like your own set of solutions. So you have to diversify as well. You have to work with an interdisciplinary team of experts kasi doon ka talaga makakakuha ng meaningful na solution to a problem. Again, sana po hindi natin ginagawa yung research just to satisfy. And gagawin ko to kasi madaling mag-publish kapag nanotechnology. I think that beats the purpose of doing research. And then again, at the same time, para sa akin po, this is my humble opinion, medyo nasasayang po yung pondo ng ating mga institusyon para sa research kung wala po talagang klarong motivation or objective kung bakit ba natin ito ginagawa. And then now I'm down to my last slide po. I really would like to thank you all for sticking. It took us. We've been talking for about like 3.5 hours now with all the technical glitches and all. But then the last tip. Could you go back, please? The last tip that I would like to share with you is the word collaborate. Yan po. Engage in your community. Hindi lang po isang tao ang makakasolve sa mga problema ng mundo. Kailangan po talaga magtulong-tulong tayo. And this is the reason why we are doing this po. We are starting to engage our teachers through our own small efforts kasi gusto po namin mas mapalapit kayo sa amin. Kasi kami po siguro yung nasa posisyon ngayon na makakapagturo po sa inyo ng tamang paraan, or hindi po pasabing tamang paraan, ng mga paraan na akma para po matulungan kayo na makapaggawa ng research in a way na impactful po talaga sa local communities ninyo at sa ating bansa. Yun po. Ako man po ay pinili ko man po sa panahon sa ngayon, sa kasalukuyan na magstay dito sa US, to be able to develop myself further in my dream job and in my dream field. It is through FilSciHub that we are trying to find ways to help and mentor students and teachers po kahit po nasa iba kaming bansa. So yun na po yung gusto po namin i-share sa inyo. Muli po maraming salamat po sa inyong pagtutok sa amin. Meron po kung meron pa po kayong time for Q&A, pwede po kami mag-entertain ng questions. Pero yun po, asahan po ninyo, marami pa po itong kasunod. Sabi po namin, we're just starting at the first step, which is ideation. Meron pa po tayong hanggang sa experimentation and data processing and conclusion, and even all the way up to writing of scientific reports. How do you communicate your scientific findings po? So yun po, marami pa po kayong aasahan. So ito po, nagpapakilala pa lang po kami sa inyo. So muli, maraming salamat po sa inyo sa pagtutok.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That is really a very nice presentation. And we are really proud here in UPLB that you have such an achievement. Hopefully, you learn a lot. So this is a very exciting talk. And this is about research, no? So, kasi baliw tayo sa research, di ba?
Actually, sunod po, si Ate Daang will also be sharing, some of her knowledge and expertise and research. So, yun po, we will be sharing with you mga bagay na natutunan po namin, as professional and full-time researchers. So watch out for those things. This is just the beginning. Marami pa po itong kasunod.
Mm-hmm. We will cover the scientific method.
Okay. So first seminar pa lang po to. Okay, about research or science investigatory project. Yes. So don't forget po yung eval form available din sa website. Yes. So, with that, thank you very much everyone, our participants.
Tapos ma'am, ipopost po natin yung full video, yung full recorded video nung meeting sa YouTube or sa Facebook. Tapos, bibigyan din po natin ng chance yung iba na fill up ng evaluation form for the certificate.
Okay. So, yun po. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Siguro gawa na lang tayo din ng announcement na ganun yung gagawin natin para they know about it. So, thank you.